Imagine waking up in a room that feels unfamiliar. The lights are too bright. Your thoughts are heavy, foggy, like you're underwater. You try to sit up, but you can't move. A stranger approaches, and before you can ask a single question, a cold needle pierces your skin. Moments later, your vision bends, the walls seem to breathe, and your sense of time begins to vanish. Panic sets in, but your voice won't work. You never agreed to this. But it doesn't matter. The people doing this to you aren't criminals. They work for the United States government. This wasn't a science fiction plot or the imagination of a paranoid mind. It was real, it was funded, and it was called Project MKUltra. Back in the 1950s, during the height of the Cold War, the American government was deeply afraid by not just of nuclear war, but of something far stranger, which is mind control. Reports surfaced that captured US soldiers in Korea were returning home acting strangely. They possibly brainwashed by enemy forces. This thing terrified the CIA. They thought, what if the Soviets or the Chinese had developed a way to control human thoughts? The US decided it needed to fight back by any means necessary. In 1953, the CIA quietly launched Project MKUltra, a massive, top-secret program designed to explore ways to manipulate and control the human mind. Officially approved by CIA Director Allen Dulles, the project was placed under the command of a chemist named Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. On the surface, Gottlieb looked like an ordinary scientist. Behind closed doors, he became known within the agency as the poisoner-in-chief. The CIA's goal wasn't just to understand the brain, it was to own it. They wanted to unlock techniques that could erase memories, extract secrets, and program behavior. In short, they wanted to build a real-life Manchurian candidate, a person who could be turned into an obedient tool, controlled remotely and unknowingly. To reach that goal, the methods were extreme. Subjects were given massive doses of LSD, often without their knowledge. They were hypnotized, subjected to electroshock therapy, deprived of sleep, isolated in dark rooms for weeks, and exposed to sensory overload or complete sensory deprivation. One prisoner was kept in solitary confinement for 74 days straight. Many people lost touch with reality, some permanently. Much of this was done without permission. In fact, many of the victims had no clue they were part of an experiment. Inmates, psychiatric patients, and even college students were used. Some were lured into fake clinics and safe houses set up by the CIA. Once inside, they were drugged and monitored like lab rats. Cameras recorded their every movement. Every reaction was a data point. One of the most disturbing chapters of MKUltra was known as Operation Midnight Climax. It took place in cities like San Francisco and New York. The CIA rented apartments and transformed them into secret laboratories. Inside, they installed one-way mirrors, hidden cameras, and stocked them with drugs. They then hired sex workers to lure men into these apartments. The men would be dosed with LSD without their knowledge and observed in secret. The goal, to see how drugs, sex, and manipulation could break down psychological defenses. There were no medical supervisors, no safety checks, just raw experimentation, directed by the world's most powerful intelligence agency. Then came the case of Frank Olson, a US Army biochemist who had worked on biological weapons. In 1953, without his knowledge, Olson was dosed with LSD by his colleagues at a CIA retreat. Within days, he became unstable, paranoid, and deeply anxious. 9 days later, he was dead, having fallen from a 13th-story hotel window in New York. The official report said it was suicide, but later investigations suggested he may have been murdered because he knew too much and was thinking about leaving the program. His family didn't learn the truth until the 1970s, and the CIA eventually issued a quiet apology along with a cash settlement. But the real cause of Olson's death remains heavily debated. As public awareness began to grow, the CIA panicked. In 1973, fearing an investigation, Sidney Gottlieb ordered that all MKUltra records be destroyed. Thousands of documents were shredded, wiping away decades of data and evidence. It was an attempt to erase history, but some documents slipped through. In 1975, a government investigation known as the Church Committee uncovered fragments of MKUltra's existence. The public was stunned. The US government had secretly drugged and experimented on its own citizens for over 20 years. In 1977, additional documents were released under the Freedom of Information Act, revealing over 149 separate sub-projects, many hidden behind front organizations and disguised as academic research. MKUltra didn't just ruin minds, It destroyed lives. Victims were left with permanent trauma. Some took their own lives. Others lived out their years in confusion and silence. And while a few lawsuits were filed, most of the people involved were never held accountable. Years later, one declassified file named CIA Document 067-60269 gave researchers another window into the program. It described how the agency operated through fake non-profits, how unwitting individuals were selected, and how the program received millions of dollars in funding without any meaningful oversight. Hospitals, universities, and mental institutions were often used as test grounds. Some didn't know what they were enabling. Others knew and went along with it anyway. What's most chilling is the cold, robotic language used in these documents. Victims are described not as people, but as subjects. Emotional responses are recorded like numbers. Pain becomes a reaction. Human suffering is reduced to paperwork. Even today, we don't know how many people were affected. Many names are blacked out. Many files are gone, and many victims died without ever knowing what happened to them. So we have to ask, could something like MKUltra happen again? In a world where surveillance, AI, brain-computer interfaces, and behavioral manipulation through algorithms are rapidly evolving, the idea of mind control no longer feels like science fiction. It feels closer than ever. Military research continues around the world. Billions are spent in secret budgets. And technology is now capable of influencing behavior on a massive scale through screens, through data, even through biology. The tools have changed, but the temptation to control the human mind remains. MKUltra wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice made repeatedly by those in power to ignore ethics in the name of control. They believed they were doing it for national security, but what they really did was violate the most private part of a person, their thoughts. Dr. Sidney once said he believed it was possible to destroy a person, his consciousness, and build a new one from scratch. But all he built was pain, fear, and silence. And the scariest part is many of the people who ran MKUltra walked away untouched. Their careers continued, their reputations remained. Meanwhile, the victims were left behind, lost in forgotten files, or buried in redacted pages. Project MKUltra isn't just a story from the past. It's a reminder of what can happen when secrecy goes unchecked, and when fear gives those in power the excuse to play God. So the next time you hear someone talk about conspiracy theories, remember this one wasn't a theory at all. It was real. There are several movies related to MKUltra. These are MKUltra, The Men Who Stare at Goats, Jacob's Ladder, Conspiracy Theory, The Bourne series, The Manchurian Candidate. Even the most popular series by Netflix, Stranger Things, was inspired by this. If this story disturbed you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more shocking stories from history's darkest files. Have you heard of MKUltra before today? Do you think we've been told the whole truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. This is Dark Archives. Until next time, stay curious and stay cautious.